dengan storage dalam konteks ya tentunya ada hal-hal yang bisa jadi pegangan ya, bisa jadi satu pendekatan nanti paling tidak kita sudah mempelajari itu gitu. Dan tentunya ini menjadi satu hal yang ini akan kita hadapi di masa yang akan datang ya, karena di masa yang akan datang ini nggak bisa dihindari mengenai storage energi ini. Dan ada hidrogen yang nantinya di depan juga dipakai di masa depan, yang sebetulnya hidrogen ini menjadi polemik di kalangan politisi Indonesia dengan pengusaha, sehingga yang terlibat menjadi satu isu yang mempengaruhi beberapa kalangan. Ya mungkin kalau kalian ngikuti ya, kalau nggak ngikuti sih mungkin nggak paham kenapa ada mobil listrik yang menang di Indonesia nggak dikembangkan lebih lanjut meskipun sudah juara dunia dan seterusnya. Ini kita alami di UPI. Nah, gimana Wanda?
Bab 4 Pak, itu kelompok 4 berarti.
Nah, siapa kelompok 4 itu?
Hafiz Samdani sama Ebati.
Nah, itu ya. Jadi ini hanya sebagai deskripsi dalam bentuk video ya, apakah yang nyata maupun tidak nyata, tapi ini ya kita lihat. Baik ya, kita sama-sama kita perhatikan dari awal kita lihat. Sudah ya, tinggal masuk.
The demand for power has increased rapidly over the past decade due to economic growth, population expansion, and the industrialization of developing countries worldwide. Managing this demand can be difficult and often results in high levels of pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, creating serious health and environmental concerns and elevating indirect costs on society. Industries such as power generation, manufacturing, and transportation often rely on non-renewable resources, thus stressing the energy grid and accelerating pollution within the atmosphere. To combat this issue, there has been a shift to employ renewable technology, a superior method of energy generation, from natural resources such as hydro, wind, and solar. Renewables are well suited to meet the diverse energy demands of various industries by providing sustainable, clean, and efficient energy, free of harmful pollution or greenhouse gas emissions. However, intermittent power disruptions are common when dealing with renewable resources. This occurs when there is a mismatch between the supply of energy generated and the consumption demanded. Energy storage eases intermittent power disruptions by storing excess power generated by renewable resources at times of low demand and distributing the power in periods of heightened demand. This helps to balance the load on the energy grid and reduce reliance on non-renewable resources. Combining grid intelligence with renewable resources and an energy storage solution provides a dependable, environmentally friendly, and lower-cost supply of energy. Blazing the path for clean, reliable, and cost-effective energy storage is electrolysis technology, applying water and unbalanced excess power to produce hydrogen. This can be distributed or stored for future use, essentially time-shifting the energy supply to best align with cyclic and sometimes unpredictable power demands. The use of hydrogen for energy storage helps augment, transmit, and distribute energy assets as needed. Proton On-Site's introduction of the first commercially available megawatt-scale proton exchange membrane, or PEM, electrolyzer is the technology behind the level of hydrogen production required to make this possible. PEM electrolyzers have a wide dynamic operating range and couple with renewable resources such as wind, solar, and hydro to store energy in the form of hydrogen for future use. With fast dynamic response times, high pressure, and favorable efficiencies, this sustainable technology is the backbone of energy storage solutions and improves grid stability, renewable intermittency issues, greenhouse gas and pollution reduction targets, and handles projects of varied size with ease. The hydrogen generated by the electrolysis in energy storage solutions can be used for a diverse variety of purposes. Methanization, for example, uses hydrogen to convert CO2 into methane. Hydrogen can improve this conversion from 55% to 99%, reducing GHG emissions while producing biomethane that can be fed into the natural gas grid or used in a multitude of other areas. Hydrogen can also be used for zero-emission fuel. Fuel cell vehicles rely on this hydrogen for transport from point A to point B, with water being the vehicle's only emission. Hydrogen fueling stations are key to developing a viable and efficient clean transport infrastructure on a global scale. Alternatively, hydrogen can be used to produce methanol. However, when supplied to industrial applications, hydrogen can be used to support various processes, including ammonia production, refining, and hydrogenation. Additionally, hydrogen can upgrade fossil fuels. When hydrogen is blended with compressed natural gas, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide emissions are significantly reduced compared to traditional fuels. Proton On-Site has 20-plus years of experience leveraging innovative PEM technology to support energy storage solutions across the globe. With over 2,500 units installed worldwide, Proton On-Site offers electrolyzers ranging in scale from kilowatt to megawatt capacity that generate 100% emission-free and carbon-free hydrogen to complement renewable resource reliance. Visit our website, www.protononsite.com, to learn more.
Oke, kita lanjut lagi nih ya. Ada lagi karena berseri.
Can you imagine our world in 2050? By mid-century there will likely be 9 billion people on the planet, consuming ever more resources and leading ever more technologically complex lives. The world's requirement for electric power is growing rapidly. And according to the International Energy Agency estimates, an additional 250 gigawatts of power will be required annually between now and 2050. Renewable energy technologies including wind, solar, wave and tidal can provide clean energy, but these technologies are intermittent, often producing power when grid utility or users don't require them. In recent years several gravity power technologies have been proposed. A new concept is proposed by University of Nottingham academics Professors Sufirafat and Yijun Yuan, who filed a patent application in May 2019. Claiming a novel gravity energy storage technology based on drums filled with soil. The technology uses storage cores that could be shifted between lower and higher points. Pulleys are mounted on the top of central concrete structure. The drums are fitted with axial shafts and bearings and are mounted on a metal frame similar to tarmac rollers. The drums could be then pulled on the sloped central concrete structure, using cables and motor generator. The motor generator is mounted on the ground to provide a good stability and ease of maintenance. When heavy drums move down, they release potential energy to the main grid system.
dangerous hammer out again, folks. I've got my dangerous hammer out again, folks, which means yet another slightly lame attempt at demonstrating a physical concept in order to introduce a video. Don't knock it though, it's cheap and it's quick, and it was the heaviest thing I could find in my drawer of many things, so I'll have to do. You might remember I last used it when I looked at liquid air batteries a few months ago. Back then I pointed out how, in very basic terms, if you can find a way to use energy to make something physically happen in a reversible way, then you've probably created an energy storage device. And then I lifted the hammer and dropped it and explained that if I tied a piece of string to the end of the handle and attached that to a dynamo, then I could have briefly generated electricity. So I thought to myself, why don't I actually do that for this video to really show you that it works? And then I saw these young shavers from the Reconstrained Design Group in Madeira, led by an extremely talented British designer called James Auger. They had the distinct advantage of a 4th floor balcony and made up the ante a bit by using a 15-litre water cooler bottle and a smart-ass gearing system, which I hadn't thought of. Anyway, the result is that they were able to very slowly lower the water bottle to generate enough energy to run a turntable playing Folsom Prison Blues by Johnny Cash. I can't let you hear the music, not because I don't enjoy a bit of the old man in black, but because despite being dead, Johnny still insists that people pay him whenever they use his stuff. So I'll leave a link to this video in the description section, and you can listen to his unmistakable dulcet tones there instead. The point is, the system works, and if you're clever, you can control it extremely precisely, either to deliver energy very quickly, like my design, or in a very controlled and gradual way, like their contraption. And that means if you could scale it up, you might find yourself with yet another solution to grid-scale energy storage. Simple, right? Hello and welcome to Just Have a Think. Using gravity to provide electrical energy is of course nothing new. We've been doing it with pumped hydro since 1907, when this facility was first started up in Schaffhausen in Switzerland. But not many pumped hydro facilities are being built anymore, mainly because they take years to construct, cost about $1 billion, and quite rightly need all sorts of long-winded and difficult environmental permits. But there are a couple of companies now working on the same concept as James Auger and his mates, literally lowering extremely heavy weights off the top of tall buildings, but in a much, much larger scale. This 150-metre tall tower system has been developed by a company called Energy, led by co-founder and chief executive Robert Picconi. And it's really very clever indeed. Essentially, you've got 3 big cranes bolted to the top of a 35-storey steel structure surrounded by a stack of huge blocks arranged very precisely into a tight cylinder. They look like concrete, don't they? And if they had actually been cast from brand new concrete, that would have been a very bad idea indeed from an environmental point of view. But Energy have partnered with Mexican materials company Cemex to develop a composite material made up of waste products. There is some concrete in the mix, but it all comes from demolition debris. And that's added to coal ash, industrial slag, and even some of the soil from local building sites, all of which would most likely otherwise have just been dumped in landfill. There's 6,000 of these composite bricks in the structure, and each one weighs 35 tons. A system of pulleys and motors, all controlled by mind-bogglingly sophisticated software, can move several blocks at a time, shifting them from their predetermined positions in the tall, tight stack to another very precisely controlled position lower down, creating an outer cylinder. As the blocks are lowered, the pulleys cause a rotation that generates electricity. Then when the structure needs to be recharged, renewable energy from surrounding wind turbines powers the winches to pull the blocks back up into their original location. The company developed their system in Switzerland and built their first full-scale commercial demonstration unit, or CDU, on the outskirts of a town called Arbedo Castione in 2020. They claim a standard configuration can provide 35 megawatt hours of power to the grid. It's pretty quick too. Picconi reckons the system can go from 0 to 4 megawatts in just 2.9 seconds and provide instant response within milliseconds. And that means it rivals lithium-ion batteries as a frequency response grid balancer. But it can also be used as a black start service, which in other words means bringing a grid system back online in the event of a blackout. Or it can be run more slowly to provide up to 10 hours of continuous baseload discharge. Energy Vault are backed by some pretty hefty investment too, in the form of $110 million from SoftBank, a Japanese investment bank specialising in bringing sustainable technologies like this to market. SoftBank already invest in large-scale renewable energy projects all over the world, so their partnership with Energy Vault should be a kind of symbiotic relationship, with the bank opening new doors for Energy Vault and Energy Vault's system facilitating even more competitive cost structures for SoftBank's investments. Piccoli says they've got their levelized cost per megawatt hour down to somewhere between $30 and $40, which, if combined with renewable energy sources, can potentially undercut existing gas-fired power plants. Hot on their heels, but not quite so far ahead on development, is this Edinburgh-based startup called Gravitricity, founded by a guy called Peter Frankel. Frankel is perhaps best known for inventing the world's first full-scale tidal energy turbine, which was bought by the German energy and manufacturing giant Siemens. Gravitricity are working on the same basic principles of physics as Energy Vault, but their unique selling point is that they intend to utilise disused mine shafts as underground void spaces into which they can lower their electricity generating weights. You might think that's a bit of a serious limitation, but actually there's a surprising number of these shafts strewn all over the planet. A full-size version of their system will be able to move weights of between 500 and 5,000 tonnes up and down within the shaft, using multiple cables to distribute the loads evenly. They claim a 50-year design life with no cycle limit or degradation, something that represents a significant advantage over lithium-ion batteries. Just like Energy Vault, they reckon they can hit a 0 to full power response time of less than 1 second with a system efficiency of somewhere between 80 and 90%. And each of their units will be configurable to provide between 1 and 20 megawatts of peak power, delivered either in 15-minute frequency response bursts or as long duration discharge up to 8 hours. They're currently building a demonstration prototype in Scotland as part of a £1.5 million project funded by a £640,000 grant from a British government agency called Innovate UK, and around £800,000 that the company have generated themselves via crowdfunding. The scaled-down demonstrator will use two 25-ton weights suspended from the opening of the shaft by steel cables. The company will first drop weights at full tilt to record the maximum instant generation speed for grid frequency response, and then they'll conduct a second test, lowering the weights more gradually, one by one, to establish the parameters for longer duration supply. If the tests go to plan, then that should lead on to their first full-scale model sometime in 2021 with a capacity of 4 megawatts. And if they do manage to successfully exploit all the available mine shafts, then eventually they plan to sink their own drop shafts in new locations, opening up even wider markets. Lithium-ion batteries currently dominate the grid-scale energy storage market. It's a sector that Bloomberg New Energy Finance projects to grow from 9 gigawatts in 2018 to more than 1 terawatt in 2040. But there's a growing number of alternatives, including these gravity systems, that are now challenging lithium-ion supremacy. We've already looked at liquid air batteries and redox flow batteries. Another option is zinc air, which is being developed by a Canadian firm called Zinc8, and then there's liquid metal batteries being developed by Ambri, both of which we'll take a closer look at in future programs. In the meantime, if you have views or direct experience of these technologies, then why not jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. That's it for this week though. Thanks to our fantastic Patreon supporters who help keep the channel independent and keep these videos ad-free. You can support the channel and receive exclusive monthly news updates from me, plus the chance to have your say on future programs in monthly content polls by visiting www.patreon.com/justhaveathink. And of course, you can hugely support the channel absolutely for free by subscribing and hitting that like button. And if you want to be notified about new content each week, make sure you
Over the past decade, prices for solar panels and wind farms have reached all-time lows, leading to hundreds of gigawatts worth of new renewable energy generation. As the saying goes, though, the wind isn't always blowing and the sun isn't always shining.
If, for example, it's a beautiful sunny day and we've got a superabundance of electricity, we can't use it.
The question of how to firm renewables, that is, ensuring there's always energy on demand, no matter the time of day or weather, is one of the biggest challenges in the industry. We need a good way to store energy for later, and the main option right now is lithium-ion batteries. You see them in products like Tesla's home battery, the Powerwall, and utility-scale system, the PowerPack. But though lithium-ion is dropping in price, experts say it will remain too expensive for most grid-scale applications.
To get to battery for the electrical grid, we need to look at a further cost reduction of 10 to 20x.
Right now, lithium-ion batteries just can't store more than 4 hours worth of energy at a price point that would make sense. Plus, they pose a fire risk, and their ability to hold a charge fades over time. To address this, there's a cadre of entrepreneurs experimenting with a variety of different solutions.
Now we're seeing flow batteries, which are liquid batteries, and we're seeing other forms of storage that are not chemical or battery-based storage.
And each has serious potential.
We looked at materials on the periodic table that were actually going to be cost competitive from day one.
Primus Power's flow battery is a workhorse.
Thermal energy storage has a pretty unique opportunity to be extremely low cost.
Our solution will last 30 plus years without any degradation in that performance.
Which technologies prevail remains to be seen, but one thing is clear. For renewables to truly compete with fossil fuels, we need to figure out a better way to store energy. From 2000 to 2018, installed wind power grew from 17,000 megawatts to over 563,000 megawatts, and solar power grew from a mere 1,250 megawatts to 485,000 megawatts. And it's not stopping there. Renewables are expected to grow an additional 50% over the next 5 years.
We know today that solar PV and wind are the least expensive way to generate electricity.
In particular, the price of solar photovoltaics has plummeted far faster than all forecasts predicted, after China flooded the market with cheap panels in the late 2000s.
All the Wall Street analysts did not believe that solar was going to ever stand on its own without subsidies. Well, a few years later, even the most conservative analysts started realizing that actually solar was going to become economic in most parts of the world pretty quickly.
And as solar's gotten cheaper, so too have lithium-ion batteries, the technology that powers electric vehicles, our cell phones, and laptops. And thanks to improved manufacturing techniques and economies of scale, costs have fallen 85% since 2010. Now, wind or solar plus battery storage is oftentimes more economical than peaker plants, that is, power plants that only fire when demand is high. Tesla, for example, built the world's largest lithium-ion battery in Australia, pairing it with a wind farm to deliver electricity during peak hours. But this doesn't mean lithium-ion is necessarily economical for other grid applications.
We don't really see the cost structure coming down to the point where it can serve those tens to hundreds of hours applications.
Basically, the market is ripe for competition.
There are dozens of chemistry being looked at today. There are hundreds of companies working on scaling up and manufacturing new battery technology.
Lithium-ion has done remarkable things for technology, but let's go to something far better.
One of the main alternatives being explored is a flow battery. Unlike lithium-ion, flow batteries store liquid electrolyte in external tanks, meaning the energy from the electrolyte and the actual source of power generation are decoupled. With lithium-ion tech, the electrolyte is stored within the battery itself. Electrolyte chemistries vary, but across the board, these aqueous systems don't pose a fire risk, and most don't face the same issues with capacity fade. Once they scale up their manufacturing, these companies say they'll be price competitive with lithium-ion. Hayward, California-based Primus Power has been working in the space since 2009 and uses a zinc bromide chemistry. So far, it's raised over $100 million in funding, including a number of government grants from agencies like the Department of Energy and the California Energy Commission. Primus's modular Energy pod provides 25 kilowatts of power, enough to power 5 to 7 homes for 5 hours during times of peak energy demand, and for 12 to 15 hours during off-peak hours. Most systems use multiple energy pods, though, to further boost capacity. The company says what sets it apart is its simplified system.
So instead of 2 tanks, which every other flow battery has, Primus only has 1. And we are able to separate the electrochemical species by taking advantage of the density differences between the zinc bromine and the bromine itself and the more aqueous portion of that electrolyte.
To date, Primus has shipped 25 of its battery systems to customers across the US and Asia, including a San Diego military base, Microsoft, and a Chinese wind turbine manufacturer. It expects to ship an additional 500 systems over the next 2 years.
Future customers are either independent power producers that are doing solar plus storage at the utility scale, or larger commercial enterprises.
Also operating in this space is ESS Inc., an Oregon-based manufacturer of iron flow batteries, founded in 2011. Its systems are larger than Primus Power's. They're basically batteries in a shipping container, and they can provide anywhere from 100 kilowatts of power for 4 hours to 33 kilowatts for 12 hours, using an electrolyte made entirely of iron, salt, and water.
When we came into this market, we wanted to come into it with a technology that was going to be very environmentally friendly. It was going to be very low cost. It didn't require a lot of volume on the production line to drive down costs.
ESS is backed by some major players like SoftBank Energy, the Bill Gates-led investor fund Breakthrough Energy Ventures, and insurance company Munich Re. Having an insurance policy is a big deal, since it will make risk-averse utility companies much more likely to partner with it. So far, ESS has 6 of its systems, called Energy Warehouses, operating in the field, and plans to install 20 more this year. It's also in the process of developing its Energy Center, which is aimed at utility-scale applications in the 100 megawatt plus range. That would be 1,000 times more power than a single energy warehouse.
We're planning to be at 250 megawatt hours of production capacity by the end of this year, which is probably a little over 10 times the capacity we had last year. And then eventually getting to a gigawatt hour of production capacity in the next couple years.
So far, key customers include Pacto GD, a private Brazilian energy supplier, and UC San Diego. But for all their potential, flow battery companies like Primus and ESS Inc. still aren't really designed to store energy for days or weeks on end.
Many of those flow battery technologies still suffer from the same fundamental materials cost challenges that make them incapable of getting to tens or hundreds of hours of energy storage capacity.
Other non-lithium-ion endeavors, such as the MIT spin-off Ambri, face the same problem with longer duration storage. Form Energy, a battery company with an undisclosed chemistry, is targeting the weeks or months-long storage market, but commercialization remains far off. So other companies are taking different approaches entirely. Currently, about 96% of the world's energy storage comes from one technology, pumped hydro. This system is pretty straightforward. When there's excess energy on the grid, it's used to pump water uphill to a high elevation reservoir. Then, when there's energy demand, the water is released, driving a turbine as it flows into a reservoir below. But this requires a lot of land, disrupts the environment, and can only function in very specific geographies. Energy Vault, a gravity-based storage company founded in 2017, was inspired by the concept, but thinks it can offer more.
And so we wanted to look at solving the storage problem with something much more environmental, much more low cost, much more scalable, and something that could be brought to market very quickly.
Instead of moving water, Energy Vault uses cranes and wires to move 35-ton bricks up and down, depending on energy needs, in a process that's automated with machine vision software.
We have a system tower crane that's utilizing excess solar or wind to drive motors and generators that lift and stack the bricks in a very specific sequence. Then when the power is needed from the grid, that same system will lower the bricks and discharge the electricity.
This system is sized for utility scale operation. The company says a standard installation could include 20 towers, providing a total of 350 megawatt hours of storage capacity, enough to power around 40,000 homes for 24 hours.
Some of our customers are looking at very large deployments of multiple systems so that they'll have that power on demand for weeks and months and whenever it's going to be required.
The company recently received $110 million in funding from SoftBank Vision Fund, and it's building out a test facility in Italy, as well as a plant for India's Tata Power Company. But some say the sheer size of the operation means it just can't be a replacement for chemical batteries.
Sounds very simple.
However, the energy density on those systems are very low. And so that's where we believe chemical-based storage still has an advantage in terms of a footprint. You can't install a gravity-based system in the city, but you'd have to install it outside in the remote areas.
Then there's thermal storage. It's still an emerging technology in this space, but it has the potential to store energy for longer than flow batteries, with a smaller footprint than gravity-based systems. Berkeley, California-based Antora Energy, founded in 2017, is taking on this challenge. Basically, when there's excess electricity on the grid, that's used to heat up Antora's cheap carbon blocks, which are insulated inside a container. When needed, that heat is then converted back into electricity using a heat engine. Typically, this would be a steam or gas turbine, but Briggs says this tech is just too expensive and has prevented thermal storage solutions from working out in the past.
So Antora has developed a novel type of heat engine called a thermophotovoltaic heat engine, or TPV for short, which is basically just a solar cell, but instead of capturing sunlight and converting that to electricity, this solar cell captures light radiated from the hot storage medium and converts that to electricity. So it's electricity in, electricity out, and it's stored in ultra-cheap raw materials as heat in the meantime.
Recently, Antora received funding from a joint venture between the Department of Energy and Shell, who are excited by the company's potential to provide days or weeks-long storage.
We think that solves a need that is currently and will continue to be unmet by lithium-ion batteries, and that will sort of enable the next wave of integration of renewables on the grid.
It's still early days for Antora and Energy Vault, though, and there's definitely other creative solutions in the mix. For example, Toronto-based HydroStore is converting surplus electricity into compressed air, and UK and US-based Highview Power is pursuing cryogenic storage. That is, using excess energy to cool down air to the point where it liquefies. These ideas may seem far out, but investment is pouring in, and projects are being piloted around the world. While these companies are all vying to be the cheapest, safest, and longest lasting, many also recognize that this is a market with many niches, and therefore the potential for multiple winners.
In the residential and commercial areas, you're going to have a certain type of technology. A lot of it will probably be battery-based. I think as you get to utility scale and grid scale, you're going to see some batteries, you're going to see other types of compressed air and liquid air solutions, and then you're going to see some of the gravity solutions that could be scaled.
Overall, the energy storage market is predicted to attract $620 million in investments by 2040. But as always, it's going to be tough to get even the most promising ideas to market.
No matter if the raw materials were dirt cheap, the initial cost of a first system is essentially astronomical.
Of course, government policies and incentives could play a major role as well.
There is a production tax credit on wind. There's an investment tax credit on solar. We, in the battery community, would like to see an ITC for batteries in the same way that it is in existence for solar.
Implementing a storage mandate, as California has done, is another policy that many are advocating.
When we get to roughly 20% of our peak demand available in storage, we will be able to run a renewable-only system because the mix of solar and wind, geothermal, biomass, all backed up with storage, will be enough to carry us through even some of these potentially long lulls.
With the right mix of incentives and ingenuity, we're hopefully headed towards a future with a plethora of storage technologies.
The future is not going to be a mirror of the past. We've got to do something that's radically different from everything that's been done up until now. I'm really excited about that.
Ini terakhir ya. Terakhir.
Hey everyone, Dale here with Pacific Sun Technologies. I've got some exciting news for you in regards to hydrogen storage and what might be coming to the market in the very near future. To get off grid with solar and batteries, you need to be able to generate energy when the sun's out and store it for when it's not. Right now, people are able to do this with lithium-ion batteries. The Tesla Powerwall 2 is a perfect example, but An Australian company named Lavo has built a rather unique cabinet that can sit on the side of your house, just like a Tesla Powerwall, but stores your excess solar energy as hydrogen. Now, before I dive into this exciting new product, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. And for those of you that live in our area of Southern California that haven't gone solar, because I know you're still out there, visit us online to receive a hassle-free quote, customized to your exact needs and at an incredible price. We have some great promotions going on, so use that link in the description below. The Lavo Green Energy Storage measures 66 by 49 by roughly 16 inches and weighs, all right, I hope you're ready for this, a hefty 714 pounds, making it very unlikely to be pocketed by a thief if it's installed on the side of your house. Now, you connect to it, or we would connect to it via a hybrid solar inverter, much like the Q-Cells, Q-Home, Hybrid G1, or SolarEdge's 7.6 Energy Hub. Now, sidebar, I'm not saying either of these products work with this particular hydrogen storage system. I'm just giving you a comparison to the type of inverter it would use. Once you have the unit connected to the hybrid solar inverter, it also needs to be connected to a water spigot, and that's it. The system will use excess solar energy to electrolyze the water, releasing oxygen and storing the hydrogen in a patented metal hydride, or a sponge at a pressure of 30 bar. Now, if you're not an engineer, 30 bar is 435 psi. The system can store roughly 40 kilowatt hours worth of energy. That's a lot. It's 3 times as much as Tesla's current Powerwall 2, and enough to run an average home for 2 days without solar energy. Now, the system isn't 100% without lithium-ion battery. In fact, the unit has one small 5 kilowatt hour buffer battery for instantaneous response for large loads. It's pretty ingenious. There's, of course, Wi-Fi connectivity and a phone app for monitoring and controlling the device. At this time, the unit is not available within the United States and is being sold in Australia. The company does expect to release the product internationally, so at least here in the United States, by Q4 of 2022. Lavo has provided some preliminary pricing on the unit, which I'm pretty excited to share with you because they expect to ship each product at $26,900 US, which is significantly more than a single Powerwall 2. Trust me, I understand that, but if you look at the storage capacity, it's actually very attractive for that price per kilowatt hour because you would literally need 3 Powerwalls to have the same amount of storage capacity. But that's not all. Lavo hopes by the time they release it in Q4 of 2022 that the price will be closer to $22,000 US, which if they are able to achieve this price point, it'll be tough for homeowners not to at least consider it if they're looking for battery backup or battery storage. Now, pulling the cover off reveals a surprise because they actually gave us photos, or they shared photos, of the inside of the unit. So the 40 kilowatt hours worth of hydrogen is kept in these 4 small red containers on the left. Yeah, you see those things over there on that image? And the rest of this big cabinet is taken up with the battery, electrolyzer, and fuel cell stack. So that's everything you need right in this cabinet. An obvious question we should all be asking ourselves, how is it better than today's home batteries? Well, Lavo says the key components should last much longer than lithium-ion battery systems, up to 30 years instead of maybe 12 to 15 from your standard lithium setup. There are also no toxic chemicals to dispose of after the unit expires. And the company says that even though it's a bit of a beast, a single Lavo system is more compact than the equivalent amount of battery storage systems. Yeah, so for those of you that have an LG Chem system paired up with SolarEdge, you would understand how big those batteries are and how much space they take up and all the additional components needed. Same with the Tesla Powerwall and many other battery solutions. I think it's safe to say that we all can agree this thing is better than lithium-ion batteries. But nothing is perfect, so we have to ask, how is it worse? Well, the safety aspect is certainly open to debate. A lot of people argue about hydrogen on this. Labo says if a leak occurred, it would rise and disperse so quickly that there's little chance of a fire or explosion. And that hydrogen is inherently no more dangerous than other conventional fuels such as gasoline or natural gas. But then there's the efficiency of hydrogen. Batteries store and release energy with minimal losses. For every kilowatt hour you produce from your solar array that gets put into your battery, you're pretty much getting about 90% of it back. So consider this your round trip efficiency, solar to battery, battery back to energy. But the process of generating hydrogen by electrolysis using a proton...
Barusan ada yang ke toilet. Kirain ada pertanyaan. Oke.
exchange membrane is only about 80% efficient. So you're losing 20% straight away. So that was just converting the solar energy into hydrogen. And at the other end, you'll lose somewhere around half of what you've got stored in the process of converting the hydrogen back into energy through the fuel cell. So you're looking at around a 50% round trip efficiency, which this isn't new knowledge for hydrogen. This has been one of the biggest disadvantages to these types of systems because it takes more energy to fill up and you get about half of it back. A 40 kilowatt hour hydrogen energy storage system starts looking more like a 20 kilowatt hour storage system. Though Labo says this system's round trip efficiency is well above 50%, so taking them at their word, this is in its early days, and hydrogen is the hottest topic on the energy sector right now, or in the energy sector. It's not unrealistic to think home storage units might start making sense at some point down the road, but Lavo will likely find this robust unit tough to sell next to a Tesla Powerwall or other battery systems for that matter. I have to give them credit where credit is due because the Lavo hydrogen energy storage system design looks terrific compared to many of the other products out there. Well, that's it for this week's video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can stay informed on the future of renewable energy. It's an exciting place right now, and there's so much innovation going on, you're not going to want to miss out. So click the subscribe button and hit the little bell icon. And let's not forget, if you are someone that lives in our area,
Nah, tadi kita mungkin ada yang paham, ada yang tidak paham ya. Tapi storage energy itu ya sebetulnya jauh beda dengan istilahnya power bank ya. Kalau kita hidrogen itu yang paling sederhana untuk memahaminya, ibaratnya power bank yang bisa kita bawa-bawa, yang harus di-charge dulu ya. Yang membedakannya itu kalau power bank di-charge langsung ke listrik ya. Listrik kita colokin berapa jam, terus energi listrik setelah diisi completely baru bisa copot kita bawa ya. Nah, kalau ini harganya kan hampir 500 juta nih ya. Power bank-nya gede ya. Power bank-nya gede yang terakhir hydrogen itu. Nah, untuk kita memahaminya bahwa kalau power bank itu di-charge dengan energi listrik dari PLN, ya, kalau ini power bank-nya atau storage energinya di-charge dari solar cell, ya. Jadi solar cell langsung masuk ke hidrogen. Hidrogen di situ menyimpan energi listrik di hidrogen yang kita storage system itu bisa dimanfaatkan untuk dikonsumsi jadi energi listrik ya. Nah itu beberapa cara yang tadi kita lihat di beberapa video yang tentunya begitu pendek dan bisa jadi masih perlu interpretasi ya apa sih storage management, storage energy itu. Yang jelas sih bagaimana menyimpan energi yang berasal dari berbagai sumber energi, misalkan dari angin, dari matahari, ya, kemudian disimpan, ya, sehingga dengan disimpan itu bisa dimanfaatkan berapa jam, ya. Jadi pada saat tertentu yang paling sederhana kita pahami power bank aja lah, ya, untuk bisa memahaminya. Tapi secara teoritis ada di buku itu, ya. Jadi tetap buku itu semua harus punya, ya. Tapi kita sudah baca per bab dan nanti kita harus meresum menyebab dengan artinya kita mempelajari ya yang bab lainnya, ya. Jadi inilah satu cara bagaimana memaksa kalian harus baca. Kalau disuruh baca aja nanti cuma singkat-singkatnya aja. Tapi inilah suatu bagian ya dengan pembelajaran daring kalau kita tidak memberikan tugas kalian untuk membaca, kalian akan terasa ya itu dari pengalaman Bapak mengajar bagi mahasiswa yang tidak punya buku dan tidak buka buku kalau punya ya. Jadi kadang-kadang mereka hampir 85% bahkan hampir 95% mahasiswa tidak memiliki buku dan tidak pernah baca buku ya terkait dengan bidang kita ya teknik elektro. Jadi itu yang kakak-kakak kalian itu yang ambil yang singkat-singkat seperti bikin supermie ya. Jadi maunya yang instan-instan ya. Gimana prosesnya yang penting 1 jam jadi, nggak sampai 1 jam jadi gitu ya. Nah, tapi tidak paham dampak dari si Indomie itu sendiri ya. Kalau kita lihat Indomie, supermie, yang kalau kita kelebihan MSG itu cepat sekali ya di samping proses untuk mencerna perubahan dari mie jadi suatu energi itu kerja lambung cukup tinggi, kemudian MSG yang mempengaruhi otak kita sehingga cepat ngantuk biasanya ya. Itu saking besarnya energi yang dibutuhkan untuk mengolah mie ya. Nah, kalau ini kita belajar tuh seperti itu ya. Kalau kita nggak punya, tidak tahu teknik elektro, jadi kalau Anda baca, Bapak yakin kalian semakin kritis terhadap setiap materi pembelajaran. Jadi di sini Bapak tidak memberikan secara detail ya. Jadi apa yang Anda sudah pelajari, Anda analisis, telaah, bisa dibuat dipraktekkan. Jadi storage energi yang barusan berbasis hidrogen itu Bapak sudah ajukan untuk lab ya. Lab yang akan datang di lab energi terbarukan insya Allah ya. Itu nanti ada dari Heliocentris Jerman. Itu bisa melalui simulator. Jadi kalian bisa lihat nanti suatu saat ya kalau ini kan bangunannya sudah jadi tapi baru 85%. Sisanya jadi nanti di situ juga punya Wi-Fi sendiri ya dengan kemampuan 10 giga masing-masing lantai tersendiri, tidak terkait dengan TIK insya Allah. Jadi kalau dengan TIK itu kita nggak bisa mengembangkan IoT, Internet of Things, karena terbagi-bagi energi atau kemampuan daya pancarnya atau rambatan transmisinya terpotong-potong. Tapi kalau kita punya ini sendiri sumber untuk Internet of Things, ya tentunya kita harus punya ada transmisinya yang konsisten ya. Jadi nanti kalau kita lihat ada 7 lantai itu masing-masing, jadi masing-masing lantai punya terhubung dengan fiber optik yang masing-masing bisa melakukan Wi-Fi lebih kencang. Yang luar biasa ya, belum ada di kampus lain ya. Nah ini lagi proses ya. Jadi kita nanti kalau kita melakukan praktek SCADA dan IoT untuk pembangkit listrik berbasis misalnya dari wind energy, solar cell, geothermal, secara simulasi, secara bisa kita lakukan, ya desainnya kita bisa buat. Tapi nanti di depan. Jadi sekarang ini tadi pagi, kemarin malam Bapak diminta sama teman bagaimana bisa nggak kita berbasis IoT untuk bisa memantau dan juga mengendalikan penggunaan energi di rumah. Jadi setiap misalkan kita kulkas, ya, kemudian pompa listrik, AC, dan lain-lain perabot rumah tangga, kita bisa pantau dan kita bisa lihat jumlah energi terbanyak di mana, sehingga kita bisa kendalikan, ya, bagaimana memanfaatkan energi listrik secara optimal dan juga ekonomis, ya, sehingga bisa juga dimatikan dari hanya menggunakan telepon, ya, dengan HP, tentunya gadget. Dengan gadget kita bisa matikan, bisa kendalikan, dan kita lihat juga bahwa sistem tenaga listrik di negara-negara maju itu sudah menggunakan IoT, sehingga wajar kalau bisa dihacker, ya. Jadi sekarang sistem kontrolnya bisa dihacker kalau lemah, ya, sistem proteksinya. Nah, security-nya lemah, kita bisa jebol, ya, itu pembangkit listrik. Nah, sekarang itu mungkin Bapak juga tidak akan lebih jauh menjelaskan storage system, karena berharap sih nanti dari kalian yang sudah lihat di buku itu, meskipun mungkin kalian tidak menerjemahkan bab-bab yang lainnya, tapi dipaksa kalian nanti semua sudah jadi, Wanda, ya, yang sudah jadi itu semua memilikinya terjemahannya, ya. Nanti bisa ketawa ini terjemahannya gimana sih gitu, ya, yang lihat terjemahan ke masing-masing kelompok gitu, ya, karena bisa juga ada yang langsung Google Translate taplok kayak kopas gitu, ya. Nanti pas dibaca aneh, ya, nggak nyambung karena Google Translate hanya sebatas per kata, jadi ada beberapa kalimat yang bisa diterjemahkan, tapi begitu bersambung ke yang lainnya bisa jadi aneh bahasanya kalau kita tidak melakukan telaah ulang, ya. Jadi kadang-kadang kita ingin cepatnya aja plok, kelihatan nanti, ya, kelihatan bagaimana terjemahan Google Translate itu, ya, hasilnya. Jadi masing-masing kelompok nanti akan Bapak lihat nanti dari situ, ya. Jadi bisa jadi mudah-mudahan, ya, karena ini juga Bapak bingung tanggal 20 Bapak di Jakarta sampai tanggal 23, ya, itu energi terbarukan, Bapak kaitannya dengan teknik energi terbarukan. Tapi di satu sisi, Bapak berharap mudah-mudahan bisa Bapak mengeluarkan nilai sebelum berangkat, ya. Jadi mungkin dari Wanda, semua materi yang ada sudah direkap, ya, yang aktif dan tidak aktif, semua nanti Bapak minta kirim, nanti digabung dengan yang Bapak miliki, gitu, ya. Jadi nanti mudah-mudahan sebelum tanggal 20 ini Bapak bisa keluarkan nilai, ya, mana yang perlu perbaikan maupun yang sudah tuntas, gitu, ya. Mungkin itu nanti Bapak harap, ya, konversi energi ini jangan diabaikan begitu saja, karena ini fundamental, ya, fundamental menuju hal masa depan itu lebih banyak, ya. Jadi buku ini yang sangat menarik, ya, kalau kita nggak baca itu nanti nulis jurnal jadi nggak ngerti. Kita hanya tengah-tengah aja. Tapi dengan baca buku itu kalian bisa mengembangkan sumber energi, ya, renewable maupun energi terbaru maupun terbarukan, gitu, ya. Nah, Bapak ini agak lelah, ya. Jadi semalam tidur cuma 3 jam, ya. Jadi kemarin agak capek juga sebetulnya. Jadi mohon maaf Bapak tidak bisa banyak untuk menyampaikan, tapi Bapak memaksakan karena ini storage energy ini, ya, penting dipahami, ya, karena tahun 2025 bahan bakar fosil sudah dihindari, di stop, nggak dipakai lagi. Jadi batu bara itu berhenti nggak dipakai, jadi tahun 2030 sama sekali tidak ada. Jadi kita pakai renewable energy itu mau dikembangkan. Ya. Jadi tentu juga ini ada pergantian mungkin LPG, walau alam. Ya. LPG akan digantikan dengan DME yang menggunakan sumbernya dari batu bara. Ya. Dan banyak lagi yang ini jadi tantangan. Mungkin demikian ya dari Bapak. Pada kawan-kawan mungkin terakhir ini kita ambil dokumentasi. Ya mohon maaf rada lilis itu Bapak Nage. Jadi nggak bisa menyampaikan lebih dalam. Agak capek kalau malam tuh. Presentasi jam 10 malam tadi malam tuh di hotel. Jadi baru selesai dari kemarin tuh 3 hari berturut-turut persiapannya dan sekarang kayaknya gempor juga nih. Baik ya. Baik, yang lainnya udah siap semua karena belum muncul semua nih. Ya Wanda ya belum muncul semua ya.
Belum, Pak.
Nah. Wanda itu orang Subang.
Iya, Pak.
Kemarin ada gempa yang Purwakarta ya, minggu lalu.
Kurang tahu sih, Pak. Soalnya di Subangnya nggak ada.
Panik, Garut ada yang mencekam tuh hari ini ya. Terjadi di Nusa Tenggara Timur, Sulawesi Selatan, Larantuka, Luluh Lantak ya. Karena gempa 7,4 ya. Ya, baik nanti kita nanti kita bicara. Baik ini belum semua muncul. Afif, Muhammad Rifki belum. Zilvia Vista, Richard Leon, Kaisar, Aditya, Raffi dan sebagian. Ya udah yang ada aja dulu ya. Nanti kalau itu mungkin gangguan sinyal ya. Oke, 1, 2, 3. Udah Bapak ambil. Ini kita record. Bisa dilihat. Mungkin satu kali lagi terakhir.